Chapter 13. 2 days went by, and we still hadn't found a cure. Champagne was even worse than before. I visited her every few hours, always running into the father from the other day. Though he sat with his son every time, he never took his eyes off me. He'd stopped applying the blue and yellow paint, but never washed it off. It had started to fade, giving him a creepy, undead look. The red eyes completed the effect. Though Champagne slept through most of my visits, she was awake now. "Why so sad, Sugar Plum?" I gladly looked away from the angry father and smiled down at her. "I hate seeing you like this." "It's no picnic for me either, but I don't feel as bad as I did the other day." Nearly every surface of her skin was covered in dark veins. The bartender's face had been covered with paint, so I couldn't tell what he looked like when he died, but I feared it was something like this. Anila's doctors are trying to reverse engineer a cure using some of the birds, I told Champagne. We should have one very soon. "Thanks for that, Sugar Honey. That makes me feel a little better." I didn't know whether or not we were close to a cure, but I wanted her to feel better however I could. She could probably read from my emotions that I was deceiving her. "I'm scared, Daddy," I heard a tiny voice say. I looked up and saw the angry dad look down at his sick son. "I'm scared too, baby." Tears spilled down his faded cheeks. "The Queen is doing all she can to take care of you." "He's lying," Champagne whispered to me. "He doesn't believe the Queen is doing enough. Help me up. Take me over there." "Why?" "I want to try something." I helped her up. She'd lost so much weight and energy that she couldn't support herself. Her legs were nothing but skin and bone. I carried her over to the father and son. She weighed next to nothing. Angry Dad stared at us as I sat Champagne down in a chair in front of him. "What do you want?" he asked. "To help soothe his fear," she replied. "May I?" She held her hands up. He stared at them for a moment before nodding. She placed a hand on the boy's chest, another on his forehead. His skin was completely covered in veins. Champagne closed her eyes and smiled. The boy smiled as well. "Wow," he said, looking at something we couldn't see. "That looks so cool." "What does, son?" "The whales. They're swimming through space. I'm riding one. We're passing Saturn." Angry Dad cried more. The boy looked around, his eyes seeing all sorts of amazing things. He looked happier than he had in days. Champagne took her hands away and nodded to me. I carried her back to her bed, where she died moments later. We held a funeral for Champagne and others who died sooner than expected. Most of them were children and elderly islanders, 6 people in all. Everyone else had at least 3 or 4 days left. Something had to be done. At the mass funeral, Angry Dad walked up to Anila. "My son is among the dead. You let him die to save a world we are not even a part of. How could you?" Anila didn't reply. She stared at him, trying not to cry. He walked away without another word. "He's right," Anila said quietly. "No, he isn't," Astrid said. "I'm letting my people die in order to protect people I've never met. Nearly half the people infected are now dead. Am I supposed to let the others die and then try to move on? We have a cure." "It's not a cure," I said. "It's entrapment. or extortion, or something. Anila stared at me for a moment, and then nodded and walked away. I wasn't sure if I'd convinced her.